Gold Coast's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now here's WPTV's First Alert meteorologist.
Mostly sunny this afternoon, a beautiful Wednesday, but very warm temperatures once again in the low to mid 80s, especially as we head towards the end of the week. Tomorrow and Friday, temperatures will get closer to those mid 80s. So near record highs expected as we close off the week, and later on Friday, showers will return into the forecast. On WPTV, First Alert meteorologist Jennifer Correa on WSTU AM 1450, Martin County's Heritage Station.
You are listening to WSTU, Stewart, Jensen Beach, Hope Sound, Martin County's Heritage Station.
It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Well, good morning and welcome back. I have a wonderful show on tap. I always enjoy having Mike Circus here in the studio with me. And, you know, Mike, you have really been following a lot of different issues that are going on, not only right here in Martin County, but also you've been following some bills that are being introduced up in Tallahassee. So I'm anxious to get into this hour and hear what you've been following.
Plenty of material for the day.
This is, we can always talk more than an hour for sure. But before I do, I want to thank my sponsors. Don't forget about that best kept secret in Martin County. You can come by boat, car, or stroll the boardwalk to explore what the best kept secret has to offer. The boardwalk features local artists, an Airbnb, art gallery, boat charters, marina, and a craft and creamery. It has craft beers, wine, and 24 flavors of ice cream. So literally something for the entire family. And I'll tell you what, as our friends from up north come down to visit us at spring break, what a wonderful place to go and visit. It's down in the Pocket in Port Salerno. It's the Fish House Art Center. You can look them up online, thefishhouseartcenter.com. Or give them a call, 772-221-5482. And don't forget, there's a marina there. Commercial Mortgage has been in the industry of small balance corporate finance since 2003. Their focus is on equity, new debt solutions, challenging corporate foreclosures, and debt restructures. Commercial Mortgage never charges a front fee or deposit, and consultation is always FREE free. Areas of expertise include hotels, marinas, office buildings, restaurants, apartments, multifamily, condos, golf courses, home builders, and land development, including new and repurposed developments. Call Commercial Mortgage at 561-310-5295. That's 310-5295, or visit them online, commercialmortgagellc.com, helping you with your finances since 2003. Also, we want to remind everybody, you can email the CaseyIngramShow.com. If you go to the CaseyIngramShow.com, you can sign up for an email blast I put out every week. It just lets you know who's going to be in the studio and the upcoming shows. So make sure you want to tune in, and you're always welcome to comment through Facebook or call in at 220-WSTU, 220-9788 if you have something to add and have a question or comment for the show. And finally, let's not forget about Indiantown Marina. It is one of South Florida's best boat storage facilities. Located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway, they're very, very well protected hurricane hull. But not only that, they're a do-it-yourself and full-service boatyard. And if you own a boat, you know you will always need service on that boat. So do-it-yourself, full-service, electrical, mechanical, bottom painting, all that stuff. You can get that done at Indiantown Marina. Give them a call at 772-631-3272, 772-631-3272. As I mentioned, Mike Circus is here in the studio with me today, and Mike is a near lifelong resident of Martin County, having moved here as a child and leaving only for college and starting his culinary career. Today, Mike works as a carpenter as well as substitute teacher at his children's school. His community experience includes being a leader in the church's youth group, former board member of the Republican Executive Committee, and former board member of the Martin County Farm Bureau. Mike currently volunteers for the Martin County Black History Initiatives, doing historical research, and engages in political advocacy at the state and federal levels. In his downtime, Mike enjoys traveling the state, sharing its natural and historic wonders with his new wife and children. I said new wife. She's not exactly new, right?
No, we just celebrated our anniversary, so it throws you off a little bit.
There you go.
We like to pretend it's still new.
It's always good to try and keep it new, you know? So how long have you been married now?
So we've been married. We just had our 10-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Was it a week and a half ago now, and this November we'll start 19 years together.
Holy
so
cow.
More than half of our lives we've been with each other.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The fact she's kept me around that long is a miracle in itself.
Well, she sounds like a wonderful lady, so.
She's settled for sure. And I thank God for it daily.
There you go, and happy anniversary. And God is one of the things we're going to briefly update folks on. And speaking of, you had studied Black history a little bit. Next week, we're going to have Jimmy Smith, and he's president of the NAACP. I think everybody here in Martin County knows Jimmy. He's going to be in here after the 4-Hers. 4-Hers are going to come in at 10 o'clock. We're going to be talking about the Martin County Fair that's coming up.
Fantastic. I saw David will be here with you. That's right.
Yes. Yep. Dave Hafner. He's taken over the 4-H program here in Martin County, and I know he'll do wonderful things with it.
Oh,
so.
I can't think of a more perfect position for him, or a more perfect person for that position, I should say, than David. I mean, he's essentially been volunteering in that position for decade
for a long
plus.
time.
So now he instead of having 15 things he does, I used to call him Mr. Martin County. He did so many things in the county. So
oh, that's funny.
It's a perfect position for him. He's going to do some really good things.
So we'll see him next week.
Excellent show next week.
David Hafner, yes, and I always enjoy the 4-Hers folks. They work so hard. It's really worth tuning in to hear what these kids do to prepare for their big week. It's 1 week a year, and it's coming right up. And then after that, we're going to have, again, Jimmy Smith with the NAACP. I love Jimmy's stories. It's, Black History Month, and he's a Martin County resident through and through and grew up here. And the stories he tells, I can listen to over and over again. So
we have such a long lineage with Black history here in the county that kind of gets glazed over, unfortunately, which is typical across the U.S. as a whole. But we have some really cool things that have happened here in the county in African American history. So it's always interesting to see a lot of that come to the forefront, especially now with the renewed interest, just community-wide.
Yes.
Again, here in Martin County, but the state and nationally as a whole.
Certainly, and there's always something there to remind us. And of course, being that's Black History Month, it's a wonderful time to sit back and reflect on how far we have come, and the county really has. And there's still many things we have to improve and do, but as a whole, we're a wonderful place to be.
Here we are in 2023 now, and a lot of people would. I'll be the first one to tell you, Spectrum Academy, when I was in high school, I had a very ignorant view of the school. There's certain things said about it, but I look at Spectrum and what it is today is just offering a second chance opportunity for students that honestly probably wouldn't have had an opportunity to finish their education otherwise. What's really interesting is that Spectrum was initially developed as a partnership with Tuskegee, was born at Tuskegee, a program called the Rosenwald School Fund, which was Booker T. Washington and Julius Roosevelt out of Tuskegee Institute. But that's where the funding came to develop the school, and it was the only high school for African American students when it opened in 1925 here in Martin County. And what's really cool about that is by the time that desegregation started to take place and in Martin County, the Spectrum Academy, or Stewart Training School as it's called, its population of students absolutely overshadowed all other colored schools in Martin County.
Wow.
To the point where the school board's biggest issue with colored education at the time was trying to get parents to settle down because there was infighting within the African American community to try to get their students who were otherwise district to go to different colored schools, trying to get them into the Stewart Training School under, Charles Murray at the time was the principal.
Oh, wonderful.
So Murray Middle School was named after Charles and his brother Robert, who were both forerunners of African American education here in the county. But yeah, it's so interesting to see. I mean, they were fighting over trying to send their kids to this school because of how high qualified the school was compared to some others in the county. And it's funny to see we still have some of those things today where parents are trying to get their kids out of one school and into the other.
Absolutely, that is still happening. And the Spectrum School today has got historical significance just for the reasons that you've said. So
they'll be, they got a 100-year anniversary. 2025 will be their 100-year anniversary opening up. Obviously, the building itself is completely redeveloped time and time again.
Right.
But it's the same lot of land that was actually bought in 1919 when we were still part of Palm Beach County before Martin County didn't exist. So.
All right, folks. Now you know why I have Mike Circus on.
And we're off topic, just like that.
I was going to say, I know, this was not even going to be talked about, but look at the information this man has and has stored in his head, and it's just through all your research and your involvement through the community. Let's talk a little bit here, some updates in Martin County, and then then I want to hear about your
Sure.
legislative updates. But the first one was, it's back in December now, but the Rural Lifestyle Amendment. We talked about that. It was passed through the county commission. It was a bit of a contentious and well thought out vote, but it ended up passing 3-2. And then, and then it had Donna Melzer filed I want to say it. She wanted an administrative law judge to look at to see if it was in compliance with our comprehensive plan. She felt that it was ambiguous and not meaningful, so she did file. I'm trying to think. It's not really a court case, but it goes to an administrative law judge. A hearing.
I'm curious to see how this one really transpires, because a lot of it took the lead off of what was going on in the city of Stewart with the Costco challenge.
That's right.
Which again went through an administrative challenge, and just recently,
Same judge, by the way.
same judge. That makes
Folks.
sense. It is reasonable. So, I mean, it wasn't, 2 weeks ago, I think Costco's, the final determination came through with the Florida cabinet to allow it to go forward and press on as the city had passed it. So it's interesting, or I'd be interested to see how this turns out with the rural lifestyle amendment change, because it kind of follows the same pattern. I mean, we're talking about two different jurisdictions, but it's the same pattern as far as changing your comprehensive plan.
It's the same challenge, basically. They're
Exactly.
talking about land use and the comprehensive plan. And the Florida cabinet is Governor DeSantis, the CFO, Jimmy Petronas, Wilt Simpson, the Ag Commissioner, and Ashley Moody, our Attorney General. It will be super interesting because Judge Folks found in favor of the challenge, but there was questions about what she used to come up with her ruling, and that it was some information that shouldn't have been introduced but was. So they brought that up to the panel, and they did overturn it. So Costco's moving forward, folks. Everybody, I know it's just that's another contentious issue. There's people that love it, and there's people that said no, it needed to be somewhere else.
Talk about a black and white issue. You're either in love with it or you hate every bit of it.
That is right.
There is no middle ground on that particular
when
topic.
it comes to Costco, for sure, there is. So
same thing with the rural lifestyle.
Rural lifestyle. So now we're going to see how that plays out, and really, we could be hearing from Judge Folks at any time. So
it'll be interesting. It'll even be interesting to see how the overturn might even affect that particular opinion, because so much judicial stuff is looked at retrospectively. What was in place at the time. And then we look at some of the decisions that are going forward. Every legislative session has this input into comprehensive plans, this input into where the authority is in the local level versus state level on development, especially right now when development is just so on fire. So it'd be curious to see if there's any relevance between the two and whether it actually changes her opinion on the matter as well.
It truly will be, and that's something that I think every legislative session that gets talked about and argued is home rule.
Yes.
Just all kinds of legislation, and with that, I'm always a big proponent of home rule. To be honest with you, Mike, and but I've seen some things that really I've said, there are times when home rule it might be better for the state to legislate on that. So
it's such a difficult balance to be able to manage both sides of that scale, because on the face, I don't think I know anybody that is opposed to home rule. I mean, it just makes sense that local community can best take a look at what challenges they're facing and best make rules to face those particular challenges. But having said that, with home rule, the closer you are to your constituency, the more you can kind of have a little bit of a mob rule effect take place. I'll give you an example. Toby Overdorf, great man. He and I have had a great relationship in the past working with each other. But I'm not going to run into him at Publix as frequently as I'm going to run into, say, Ed Campy or somebody else on the county commission. So you usually have a much louder voice at your local level than you do at the state or federal level, which is great in a lot of ways, but it also means you can have a heavier push on that mob mentality. You can get a very loud group of people, small group, but a loud group of people that can push forward some ideas that may step on your right as an individual, somebody else's right as an individual.
That actually happened, and I wanted to cover that as well and go over the pet ban, retail pet store ordinance.
Example.
This is an absolute perfect example where, I was all for home rule, and now I'm thinking, maybe the state needs to look at this, because this was something that, in my opinion, and in your opinion, it violated the Constitution, not only of the United States, but the Constitution of Florida. These folks started their business up. It was legal, and then the county turned around for no good reason and made them illegal.
That's it. A very vocal minority brought up, and by all means, pet mills are an issue in our country. I'm not going to say that they're not.
That's right.
There's no doubt about it. nevertheless, a vocal minority brought forward what they considered to be a solution. But that solution meant putting people out of business who otherwise had every legal opportunity, legal right to do so. And again, not in a proactive manner, but a retroactive manner,
Right.
which really crosses a line as to where the rights of the individual or the rights of the businesses might lay. And I mean, I'm not going to say the thing, but something's paved with good intentions. So
Right. That's exactly right. It is. There was good intentions. And I looked at this, and it's the Humane Society, the National Humane Society, started this initiative 15 years ago. And at the time, there was, they claimed there was 10,000 puppy mills statewide. So now they've got 6 different states with statewide bans. They have almost 500 municipalities, counties across the nation that have instituted these bans. And lo and behold, they're saying now there's over 10,000 puppy mills. So it's like clearly it's not effective. You need to go after the actual problem.
When we talk about that vocal minority, they pushed that number very heavy, 500 municipalities.
Right.
There's over 90,000 governing bodies in the United States
Right,
of
so it's a
America.
very small
The vast
amount.
majority of them are actually under 20 employees, like special districts that we talk about, water districts, stuff like that. But throughout the entire United States, there's over 90,000 individual governing bodies, about half of which are school districts. So
I'm glad you said
500
that.
governing bodies
Yes.
is not really a big number when you think about it.
And they said something in Florida, it was like 40 or 60, I don't remember what the number was, municipalities. And this didn't mean counties. It meant it could have been a village or
Cities,
township.
village,
That's right.
the water district of East Hernando County,
So,
maybe.
yeah, so it's like maybe, I think it was like 16% of Florida municipalities had passed this. And
Remember
it was
one of the
disappointing
biggest
Martin
things
County
we got
followed.
going on right now at the state level is the Reedy Creek Improvement District, Disney's own little community.
Yes.
That is a legal municipality.
That's right. That's
That's
one of
That's
one of
legal
our
municipality out
many.
of, I think we nearly 1,800 in the state of Florida
Alone.
So
it just
we had
goes to
quite a few-
show.
We had 7 of them that were that lost their district status that currently have to either reapply to have new district status under the 68 Constitution for the state of Florida. That's one of their deadlines is to do that. This legislative district, the majority of which were dissolved because, frankly, they weren't used anyway. But it wasn't just Disney that lost their district status. It was 6 others, including Disney.
Wow.
So we have a lot more municipalities than we give credence
That's right.
to.
You got to look at the numbers, the details in the numbers.
Yes.
So sometimes it sounds impressive when you say you have 15 municipalities, but if there's 1,800 total, it really is quite the minority. And I'll get off this in one second, but I did want to update folks on this ordinance because in December, right before Christmas, when I was off the air, it did go back to the Board of County Commissioners, and they elected to keep the ban, but to give the pet stores 6 more months before they would need to go out of business. And again, that's a really unfortunate thing. The pet stores did everything that they could to try and prove that they are good actors, and that's all they wanted was a chance. And I just wanted to share a letter one of the owners had written the county commission, and it's a little lengthy, but I took some excerpts from it. It's been 6 months since we learned of the surprise hearing on June 6th, where Martin County BOCC publicly informed the community that the BOCC had worked since just following the opening of our business and making a huge investment here in Martin County to draft a pet store ordinance that would order us to close our new business without having met us, without our store ever being inspected, and having afforded us no due process. Throughout this time, nothing has changed since the initial way this process was conducted. There's been no due process, no truthful investigation process, and we have continued to be blindsided by untrue allegations, innuendo, and contrived documentation without ever really having the opportunity to spell those truths. These pet store owners were so frustrated because they wanted, at one point during one of the meetings, one of them said, "What are you talking about?" when they were saying they're buying from puppy mills and they're bad people, they're doing this and that.
Yep.
And they were told to be quiet, that public comment was over. And so they never got a chance. That's why I'm reading this today. I want to at least give a little, fair shake to them. But, full explanation in response to the allegation that the animal hospital in West Palm Beach had been issued citations in the past. It's true, but the citations were given improperly. Hospitals are not governed by animal care and control or county ordinances. Per the DBPR and the Board of Veterinary Medicine, the hospital does not now, nor has it ever, sold live animals. They said one of the animals there didn't have water. That animal was on an IV fluid. It was under vet care and couldn't drink water. So, it's one of these things you go into these citations and, she really went on in response to the allegation that we purchased puppies from known puppy mills. They do not purchase from puppy mills. And one of her breeders was called a puppy mill by the National Humane Society, and she said it was because this person had sold to a pet store that had sold to Petland.
Okay.
And there are bad actors out there. And apparently they didn't want to sell, this puppy breeder didn't want to sell to Petland. But when the Humane Society found out they were selling to Petland, they didn't even realize the pet store had changed ownership to Petland. They put him on the 100 horrible list. And so now they're called a puppy mill, and that's one of her breeders. And when that person found out it was Petland, they stopped selling puppy mills. But there you go. So there's so many explanations. And I just kind of wanted to share a little bit more. It's a very long letter. It'd probably take me the rest of the half hour. I was going to read it all, but honestly, I think you get the point.
Well, not to mention, nobody's perfect in life, let's be honest.
Right.
I mean, there's only
Right.
one perfect being, and I'll tell you right now that I'm not it.
I'm not either. I'm not either. And everybody.
So to hold that over somebody's head,
Yes.
it's like, okay, when you found an issue, you rectify it, so you're going to continue to punish somebody
Right.
over a previous issue? I
Right.
mean, I think if we were to apply
That
that
already
to
took
the,
responsibility for that issue. And
if we were to apply that to the people that made this decision, I don't think it'd work out too well in their favor either.
right.
So
That's exactly right. So that's where it stands with the puppy stores today, and we'll see what happens. Legally, I know that they're trying to assess their situation, but it's been disheartening. 16 employees they employ here in the county, and
Yeah.
it's a safe place to go purchase puppies, and now that's gone. So
it's a dangerous precedent to set, to say the least, that we'd go forward with an ordinance on something that retroactively went after people already existing in the county. Because even for those that are just adamant, they don't want to listen to anything, they're adamant, they're against these pet shops, and they want them gone, period, and that's it, ipso facto, done. To set this precedent that we're going to allow ordinances to be crafted at the local level that are retroactive to people existing because somebody comes out and says, hey, we don't like it, that's extremely dangerous. I mean, that can be applied to, you said it how many times, this is a small business issue. This can be applied to any other business out there.
it can be applied anywhere. Any small business owner should be concerned. I mean, again, this is a violation of the Constitution, ex post facto
Yes.
laws. They were completely illegal, and the county commission turned around and made them illegal for
And this, like Stacy brought up, this is the exact thing that fuels the flames of the fight between home rule
That's
and
right.
state preemption. The state has a responsibility to ensure the legal rights that are endowed to us as citizens. So when you have something that happens at a local level that counteracts that, the state is the one that is in the position to come in and say, hey, we're going to stop it. And that's a hard one to do
It
for
is.
the state to give the power back to the counties. It's a very difficult thing to do. And I mean, for years I've looked at home rule issues, particularly in tobacco, but just in
Right.
general, firearms as well. That's one that takes a long time to turn the train back around on. And almost never does the state take a preemption in a case where the counties were not being charged by their citizens for some
Right.
type of transgression to begin
Overstepping
with.
the
So it's always a
bounds.
fight between the citizens and the county, and the state steps in and takes the toy away from both kids and says, guess what? It's mommy and daddy's toy now.
That's right. And that's
So-
kind of what's happening.
Yeah.
It's like
It's hard to get your Xbox back when you and your brother keep fighting.
That's
so.
right. That's right. So we're just going to take it away.
That's it.
And unfortunately, I think, this was one of those cases where I'm like, I can understand why sometimes the state does overstep home rule, because this
Yep.
isn't right to these legal businesses. But, a small group came in and convinced our commission that I understand they were trying to do a
Delicate.
thing. Everybody wants to save abandoned and
course, of
abused
course.
dogs. That's not the argument that happened here, though, unfortunately. So, and Eric Miller, I'm glad you chimed in. He said we need to work close to home and to bring back freedom. Eric, you're going to be on the show. We're looking at hosting a show March 1st because there's a lot of things that are happening in Indiantown.
yeah.
And Scott Watson filed an election complaint with the Florida Election Commission, and lo and behold, they are charging Robert Burns, who got really infiltrated Indiantown politics, who's up in
Yes.
Brevard County. And, Eric's looking into some information up in Brevard County about this. And I know Scott Watson is very excited. There's 42 counts of election fraud being charged against Robert Burns. It's just unbelievable story what's happening out there.
Oh, Indiantown's potential has been there just forever and a day. Indiantown's had the potential for great expansion, great growth, and they were really hamstringed by the county for a long time before they had their incorporation as a village. So I can fully understand a lot of the reasons why people wanted to incorporate. Having said that, a lot of people recognize that incorporation is now an extra level of government. I don't want to say interference, but government to work with or to work against you, either
Right,
or,
right.
depending on how well you get organized, especially from the get-go, which really was the struggle for Indiantown. I mean, they had a hard time getting their legs under them in an organized fashion, and unfortunately, they're kind of getting to that time to pay the piper.
Truly.
And, it's exciting to see Taryn now in I guess an interim position
Yes.
is what they have her with for the village of Indiantown. I mean, she's got a
Yes,
world
Commissioner
of
Harold Jenkins
expertise.
says, I want her back because she works for him with his landscaping company. So it's supposed to be interim. We'll see how it all plays out.
We'll see how it plays out. But now they have somebody that has from an administrative standpoint, not an elected position, but an administrative standpoint, they have somebody that has
Right.
just a wealth of knowledge and experience. And I mean, I know a lot of people that ideologically do not like Taryn Krista. And that's all right. We all have ideological differences. But that's where the importance is from an administrative standpoint. She has an experience to know how to dot her I's and cross her T's.
Right.
Which is something that the village just desperately needs at this state.
It
So,
really needed a true leader. And I think that they showed that, you got to watch who's infiltrating the politics. It's going to be really interesting. Something else Eric said, he heard his name and the audio dropped. Uh-oh. I didn't push the red button, Eric.
we did that on purpose, Eric.
But he's going to talk a little bit about the Brevard REC. I mean, they have where they feel like they've been infiltrated from the Democratic Party. So, and then they use this Robert Burns to attack fellow Republicans. And Randy Fine is part of the person that had, filed these election contention complaints.
He's been a great stalwart of the state. He's,
Yes, he is. Randy
been
Fine
very-
really is. He may be our next governor. Who knows? You never know.
Tell you what, I never really thought about that, but I can see where he might head in that direction. I can see the potential in that.
He might.
So.
We'll see after we get our great Governor DeSantis elected president. No, he hasn't filed yet, but we all
Worst
realize
kept
he's going that way.
secret.
Yeah, exactly. Worst kept secret ever. So, but really exciting times that are going on, and all these things, folks. I think it just tells you that we really have to be involved locally and really know what's going on, and you just can't. I think one thing that happens that's sad for me is unless it's in your backyard, unless it affects you personally, people just don't seem to get involved and really pay attention. And then all of a sudden, it happens to you, and you don't have the support you need from others.
And I'll tell you, I mean, great wife, 2 fantastic kids. I got to work to keep food in my belly, just like absolutely everybody else. I fully understand. It takes a lot of time just to stay alive these days, let alone getting into something like politics where there's a legitimate feeling that people are just spinning their wheels. I mean, there's a lot of people.
Oh, you feel many times you're not heard.
Time. A lot of people feel that way, and I'm not going to tell you that every time you put forward your effort, it's going to pay off, because realistically, it's an uphill battle every step of the way. Nevertheless, if you throw in the towel now, it's never going to change.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Your only hope is to get your voice out there,
That's
try
it.
to reach out. You may not get a response, but hopefully when there's enough people, you will get a response. I can tell you that. If you rally enough support,
Worst
you will
case
get a
scenario, you're
response.
going to sleep easy at night knowing you did your part.
Yes.
Worst case scenario.
And we always say, if you don't vote, don't complain. Get
That's
out there
it.
and vote. That's
Exactly.
where it starts. If you're going to do something, at least vote, right?
That's right. That's exactly it.
So, all right, Mike. So tell us what's going on here. We'll start with the county, and then we'll kind of move up to what's happening in Tallahassee.
Sure. So I guess it was the last meeting, the 24th. The county had their legislative priorities, what they're looking to achieve going throughout this year. And a lot of it's the same that we've had for several years now. We're looking at, obviously, water quality issues are a big thing, big concern. Sarah Hurd had stated that one of her objectives, or I said 2 objectives she had that she specifically stated. One of them was looking at the releases out of Lake Okeechobee from a mechanical standpoint, which I thought to be quite ingenious. I mean, we know that there's very limited things we can do as a local body when it comes to water discharges out of Lake Okeechobee.
Yes.
As that's a predominantly federal decision, as well as some state involvement. But Sarah had a very good point. The locks, or the water discharge we have now, essentially the water rolls under the locks, which brings with it sediment, which brings with it a lot of not just water, but the actual
Nutrients
dirt
and
and
pollutants.
nutrient and pollutant itself. But there's several other locks where you can lower them top down where water spills over, instead of having it flushing out as a fully open gate or
Well, that's
flushing from the
interesting.
bottom. So it's a unique way. It's a new way to take a look at the problem. I mean, we've spent decades spinning our wheels trying to say stop the water flow, and we've gotten, I don't want to say we've gotten to the end of that road. We're not throwing the towel in on that fight either, but looking at it from new and unique perspectives where it's like, okay, how can we manage, if we're going to receive the water, how can we get the cleanest water instead of dirt and muck at the same time?
That's right.
So it's and this is something that's been done in other water release channels around the lake. So it's not like Martin County's reinventing the wheel on that either. So I really
makes sense, Mike.
It does. it makes sense. Not to mention the fact that these are newer systems, which indicate, you flip that coin over, if it's a newer system, it indicates the one you got's an older system.
Right.
So these
Right.
things in themselves have a shelf life on them where they have to be replaced for safety purposes anyway. So if they're going to be replaced, or they're coming up on the end of their usable shelf life, why replace them with a system that we know probably isn't the best opportunity?
That's
if you've
right.
got to tear it out and redo it anyway, why don't we do it with an improved system where we're getting the water but not the muck and the sediment and such like that?
That's right.
So, I mean, something like that.
I like that
I think
priority.
it's a fantastic thing. It's a great priority. And let's be honest, Sarah Hurd made it very clear that water is her priority, natural environment is her priority. But
Always
to be
has
able
been.
to look at this and say, okay, here's what we've learned in the past. Here's
Right.
how far we've gotten. Let's look at this from a different angle. Maybe we can be more effective, or at least have more options coming in by going this route. So I thought that was fantastic. Fantastic. She brought that up, a very inventive idea that I'd love to see explored both the county
I think it's a
and
great
state.
idea.
I think it'd be fantastic. I really do. Another one of hers, I think it's a bit of a long shot, and I love that she brought it up, but trying to get a national park designation for the Indian River Lagoon itself, which I think she's really shooting for the stars there. And
Mike, I had the Indian River Keeper on a week or two ago, Jim Moyer, and that's exactly what he said his goal is as well, is to try and get this designated as a national park.
it would
Tough
be
to do, yes,
fantastic.
but
It'd be fantastic. There's only 42 or maybe 50 national parks in the
of course we got the
nation.
Everglades, you know.
I mean, Department of the Interior has about 500 locations over 50 states and six different territories that are owned by the United States. There's about 500 locations the Department of the Interior oversees as, national park or national park affiliated sites. So the Indian River Lagoon getting that designation is going to be a very, very hard
Uphill battle.
shot. Having said that, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's right.
So
Gotta try it.
Why not try? I mean, if it's not going to bankrupt the county, if it's not going to be a huge financial thing, and we're talking about
Right.
time and labor, especially in something like this where it's mostly volunteers putting forward the time and labor to make that happen.
That's right. It is.
We'll take all the help we can get, especially if it has the opportunity to open up new funds and new financing.
Yes,
So,
yes, and protections. Hopefully
very
that's
much,
it. So
very much. So, in the protections aspect, that brings up a great point too. I mean, the protection aspects are in areas that are prime for development, that realistically are going to be developed over the next 30, 40, 50
Right.
years. So that's going to be an uphill battle in itself, whereas trying to protect those areas from future development when they are the most reasonably placed areas for future development, that's kind of going to be a
It'll
hard
be a
shot
battle.
across the bow to get going. But, I tip my hat for her again. She's looking at new and creative ways instead of trying to do the same thing over and over like we've done the last several
Right.
decades. So kudos to her on that, and I wish her the best of luck.
absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
some of the other things we had coming on is that, give me a second here. I actually got notes this time.
Read
so
your
I'm
notes.
prepared.
I'm going to update one while you're.
Okay, you
getting
update
around.
one.
One is the All Aboard Florida Bright Line Bridge here in Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be closed. They're scheduled for 3 solid weeks, May 1st to the 21st, and then 2 weeks before that, 2 weeks after that, overnight from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., I believe. So that is going to be absolutely, devastating. If you're west of the bridge, you're not going to be getting through.
Yeah.
So,
What a
we'll
100-year-old trellis. What
my
other
gosh.
option do you have?
they have to do their upgrades, and let's just hope the upgrades actually work so that the thing goes up and down and doesn't get stuck in the up or down position. So, and maybe it'll be quicker. I don't know. I don't know. So, but 3 weeks
Train
is a
wreck,
long
no
time.
pun
And
intended.
yeah, I
whole-
know
this
it
whole
is.
process has been. So
It is. So
But as I forget, the other two that legislative priorities, one was brought forward by Commissioner Affordable Housing. Several commissioners, Ed Campy and Ms. Hetherington as well, brought this up. Affordable housing is just perpetual problem across our community,
Everywhere.
state, the
Everywhere.
federal level, everywhere. And this is something I'm interested to see what transpires, because this is the main priority that's been voiced at the Florida Senate and the Florida House. So how much action might take place here locally, or how much effort's put locally? And quite frankly, there's only so much you can do locally to affect change in
Agree.
this policy matter. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of anything except for discussion for the foreseeable future at the local level. And not that the local level can't do anything, but it's also practical to make sure we wait until after May when the state is done with theirs, so we know what laws the state's going to, if any changes the state makes coming up in July. Wait until that point. This way the county can have some direction. Okay, what can we do? What can't we do? What is practical? what is their financing or what state grants might be available or national grants might be available.
It's so tough, Mike. Do you know, I just in the newspaper, TC Palm this past weekend, they put out, we had record-breaking numbers of people moving to Florida. We always heard 1,000 a week. I broke down the numbers last year. 1,509, not a week, 1,598 people, basically 1,600 people a day are moving to Florida. 1,600 a day. And, you know, everybody talked about in Stewart, we have 3,000 new apartments. That's 2 days worth of people.
Yeah.
We have so many people moving here. I mean, to attack this affordable housing, there's such a demand. It's tough.
I'm blessed and fortunate. I have a meeting this afternoon with Toby Overdorf's folks. I've had some great productive conversations with John Snyder's team as well as Ms. Harrell's team over the last couple weeks. One policy that I'm looking at working at this particular session is a change to Florida's Homestead Acts, particularly our Save Our Homes Act. So in the state of Florida, you can leave your home to your spouse without losing that 3% or CPI cap.
Okay.
You can also leave it to your minor children without losing that 3% CPI cap. But if I were, let's say I'm 80 years old and I'm ready to leave it to my children at 50 years of age, when I go to leave my home to them, they lose that cap. Yes. So you think about what kind of financial burden that is. I crunched the numbers on my own family home. My folks still live in the same house that I grew up in starting from 5th grade on. If they were to leave that to my younger brother to entice him to move back from North Carolina, if they were to leave that home to him, their property tax bill would increase 197%. And, you know, to me, it's just kind of a jarring thing to think about.
Because it's staying within the family.
Exactly. How are we ever going to offer affordable housing at any level if you can't even leave a house free of charge to your next of kin without punitively hitting them with such a high tax burden that they can't afford it either? I mean, I
agree with you.
To be able to do with that. And it's really funny because the Save Our Homes Act is part of a homestead law. Homestead laws were intended for that purpose. It wasn't to make housing affordable for people per se, to travel from one house to the next like portability does today. The purpose was you got yourself your 20 acres and you settled that land.
That's right.
Now you hand it down to your children, your grandchildren, you pass it down the line, which is very counterintuitive to the portability aspect we use today. Not that I'm against portability, I think it's fantastic. But nevertheless, if you can't even hand your house to your kids without killing them on taxes, how are you going to make anything affordable?
It's much the same as the inherence tax, and that really struck farmers the hardest because mom and dad would die, you'd inherit the farm, and you couldn't afford the taxes that was charged for you for the inheritance tax because it was an asset now. All of a sudden,
that's one of the primary examples that we used in this legislative change that we're proposing. When we look at small farms, I mean, small farms are people that are usually borrowing against next year's profits to be able to put the seeds in the ground today. So when you have the patriarch and the matriarch passes on, and they are, you know, God willing, fortunate enough to have a next kin willing to take over the farm, which itself is a miracle these days.
Right.
If they do have that next kin willing to take it over, not only do you have the financial aspects of the business and the taxes on the business, and then you have your agricultural tax classifications having to go through that process starting from scratch because now you have a name designation change. Then you hit them with a property tax valuation over a large scale size of land, even if it's a small farm of 100 acres. That is a huge property tax bill to swallow, even if it's only that 1 year in your gap year where you're getting your paperwork straight.
Right.
That gap year, when you're borrowing profits from the next year to put seeds in the ground today, it's just not sustainable.
No.
And I mean, the number one leader of wealth in this nation is familial wealth, passing it down from generation to generation to generation. We talk about this great income disparity between the haves and the have-nots in this country. It's because trying just to live these days and trying to have the funds to everybody have their own single little household, it simply isn't a sustainable model. And 206, 207 nations are on this big blue marble that we have.
That's right.
We're about the only one that doesn't have a multi-generational aspect to living. And I'll tell you, some of the greatest years that I've had was living with my father-in-law when my wife and I were first married and our daughters were first born. Not only from the financial aspect that it gave us an opportunity to save up our funds and not, we all split bills, but splitting bills is a lot better than everybody having their own household and having those bills to swallow.
It gave you the opportunity to get on your feet and save up a little bit.
Save up money. It's a great aspect that, you have that expendable income to put back into your community as well. I mean, if I'm not spending all my money on electric and rent, I can go over to the restaurant across the street and support the income. I can go over to the Elliott Museum, or maybe I want to go, if someone's doing this in Orange County and they want to come down to Little Old Stewart to go fishing, 18% bed tax. I mean, if you have a multi-generational household in another part of the state, you got money to go on vacation. And there's a lot of financial draw to being able to kind of put more people in houses. And even the basic idea, if you're putting people into underutilized houses now, grandma has 3 bedrooms in her house. Well, if we're putting more people, the same family, into that one house, that's less demand for people to buy up more houses,
Right.
less demand on people to get into apartments and rentals. That little demand, that relief on demand means we have more houses for sale, less bidding wars to buy houses, so the costs come down. Less house demand means less need to build more houses.
Supply and
on
demand.
spec.
Simple economics, right?
I guess the best example I can give is there's no silver bullet to affordable housing, but our proposal to encourage multi-generational housing is kind of like a shotgun blast. Each pebble takes away a little piece of.
What kind
all
of
these
feedback are
problems.
you getting as you're speaking with our representatives?
Yeah, I was very happy. Gail, for example, I was very happy at the 4-County Coalition. She brought this up on her own volition. She said,
Great.
we're looking at this option here on the Homestead Act. We're looking at this as a Save Our Homes cap. So she brought that up herself, which was extremely encouraging to see. Like I said, I'm talking to Toby later on this afternoon and his group, John's people. They were Miss Sweeney was extremely happy to hear what we were having, very encouraged, and which was great. It seemed like there's good reception on both ends. Haven't yet seen, we're trying to do is get this as an amendment onto an already proposed piece of legislation that's already in the House and the Senate. The House sponsor just came through last week, I guess it was. So we're trying to get this as an amendment, but it's looking encouraging so far. But we'll see. I mean, it's
exciting. That is.
Nothing's over till the fat lady sings.
No, that isn't. And somebody's got to propose the idea.
Challenge it.
Of course.
So.
And like I said, somebody's got to propose the idea. Our legislative, they've already had the meeting this year, but every year they'll get together and it's usually out at IRSC and bring your ideas, bring sample bills, and you never know which ones might make it to the floor.
I went up a few years ago. There's a House member. We had something that was going on at the federal level, and I had a 4-page proposal typed up and says, here, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to see the House from Florida just put together a non-binding resolution that says, hey, we support this idea, send it over to the feds, and just get your official support behind it. And I'll tell you, this particular House member, he took about 30 seconds to read through it. He stuck his head out the door, yelled at his legislative aide, says, I want this down in drafting. I mean, I kid you not, it wasn't more than a 15-minute process. And it didn't get too far in the House, but I can go online now to the Library of Congress and I can look up that piece of legislation inside the Federal Registrar because it was officially filed as a support letter.
That's awesome. And it can always come back. You can always try another year. So.
That's exactly it. So you never know until you try.
You don't. What else is happening up in Tallahassee? I know you've been following a lot of the bills that have been filed, and I think last year there was over 2,000 bills that initially get filed, and
there was
incredible
about
amount.
3,600 bills. Average 3,500 bills that are averaged over the last 5 years, and now a lot of these are duplicates because you have a Senate and a House bill, but still, I mean, 3,600 pieces of legislation to be filed in a session for 60 days.
Yes,
is a
I was
going
to
to
say it's a 2-month session. It's great.
I'm curious to see. I got a feeling there might be a little bit of rollback. I checked this morning. It was it 484 as of this morning before I came in today. We still have 4 more weeks of committee weeks.
Before session starts.
Yep, 4 more weeks of committee weeks before session even starts. And, little secret, committee weeks are the way we cheat because you get 60 days of session by law. That is it. You have 60 days to do your work. So we have 8 committee weeks. So I don't want to say as a cheat. I don't mean it like that. We have 8 committee weeks as a way to
You're getting more work done, right?
Exactly. Artificially expand because now we can weed through some of the things that might not make it to the floor or probably don't deserve.
Concentrate on those that should.
Prioritize. Exactly. Prioritize.
Did you see some other bills up there that folks might be interested in? I know, like insurance regulation is such a huge topic.
I don't think there's not a whole lot for insurance regulation at this stage because we're coming off of the special sessions on insurance. The big draw this year looks to be affordable housing.
Okay.
Affordable housing is going to be a very big one. Senate President just dropped her affordable housing bill last week. It was 93 pages, which by state of Florida standards is a pretty lengthy bill. This one, I'll be honest, affordable housing is very important to me, but I'm very concerned about it. When you read through it, it's very heavy-handed in regulation on development, or it seems to be heavy-handed in regulation on development, trying to make sure that we're building houses that fall within a financial criteria that's accessible to people that are, I think, 150, 250% of the poverty line. And that's kind of a scary notion to me. If we build houses on the perspective of, okay, people that are in poverty-stricken situations can afford them, that's a dangerous precedent to set, just because that's an ever shifting target.
Yes.
When
yes.
our CPI is 7, 8, 9% now, 3 years ago it was 1.5 to 2%. So cost of living skyrocketed over the last 2 years, meaning that affordability is completely tanked. It's highly volatile. So if you're going to build houses out, especially some like communities that are multi-year plan outs,
right,
you have absolutely no idea what's going to be affordable in 3 years.
No, you don't.
$2,000 a month might be unobtainable today. $2,000 a month might be reasonable in 3 years. It might be absolutely unobtainable in 3 years. Or that might be dirt cheap and everybody's shocked. Oh, I can't believe I can get this for $2,000 a month. You just have absolutely no idea with forward planning. So to me, going through a process of shooting at a moving target like that, as opposed to looking at how can we make things affordable by just having more money in people's pocket, or making things more accessible that are already in place today, stuff that can be started within 6 months instead of 5 years. That's my general idea how to do things. Not to say that the senator's proposal is bad, but it's just an ideological difference.
It's tough for government because they have to be in a position where they need to help the private sector really provide things that our society needs,
yes.
not do it, not take over everything. So,
and we all know the unintended consequences always seem to emerge. So if you're going to put this restriction on people saying, hey, we're not going to allow you to build if you don't have X amount of your buildings
right.
within affordable housing, okay, so how many people are going to turn around and say, well, we're just not going to
build?
build?
We're just going to do it.
So, okay, we're not building anymore. Well, now you have a limit on how many structures and how many units are available, which makes the units that are available skyrocket once more.
That's absolutely right, because builders have to depend on the cost of the goods. I mean, they have their own numbers that they have to make as well. So if the government comes in and tells them you have to start renting at $500 a month, they're going to walk away.
Well, in a speculative industry like construction is to begin with, when you're building everything out on spec, you already know that your profits are going to be either great or they're not going to be existent at all. So if you're going to tell somebody you're limiting their profitability before they even put a pen to paper to sign a contract, that's a huge dissuade.
It is.
We'll
it
see what
is.
happens. But some other things. I know the governor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, real quick here, we have a former Speaker Pro Tem, Marilyn Magar. She's also the chairwoman of our Martin County RAC. Appreciate you tuning in. And she wants to know, and you can contact her after the show if you could come and present at one of the RAC meetings. You have some wonderful information here that I think would be great to share with everybody. So
I'll tell you, Marilyn, fantastic. One of my favorite memories, real off topic, one of my favorite memories going up to Tallahassee. Me and actually David, he'll be in office with you next week.
Dave Hafner.
Dave and I going up there with Farm Bureau. So Mary Lynn used to have hanging on her wall pieces of art from throughout the community, and several of them were 4-H students. And I remember going up there, Dave and I, we had some fresh from Martin County vegetables and eggs we brought up.
Yes.
And seeing that little piece of art hanging up on the wall from a local community member is really cool. So
it is. It's very meaningful.
I still remember that. So I still remember that, Mary Lynn.
We miss you, and we hope we get her back in office here in the future. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think you would be a wonderful speaker for the RAC. You've got some great information.
I'd love to. Some of the other things we got going on at the state level, the Governor DeSantis has put forward what is the number one House bill, HB 1, which, quick side note, when you look at a bill, the lower the number is, the higher the priority.
Okay.
So if you see a House Bill 7,812, it's probably not high on the committee list. House Bill 1's going to get some attention. That's just how they unofficially structure the stuff. So HB 1 is a school choice bill that Florida already has a pretty wide open voucher program for students that are bullied, students who are in families that are below a certain income level, first responders, so police, fire, rescue, stuff like that. If I'm not mistaken, police, fire, rescue that are active in the state under a state licensure, they can get choice for voucher to send their kids pretty much anywhere to begin with. Obviously, within reason, the voucher only covers the same financial amount that the state would reimburse to the local school district. So it's not like you get to send your kid to a $60,000 a year school for free.
Right.
You're still going to get that $7,000 that would have gone to your local school district. And so, but it's looking to expand that essentially to everybody, which I think is fantastic. I'm a huge proponent of school choice. I think this. I know there's a lot of people that are kind of counterintuitive to it. They see this as pulling money away from local school districts. I, on the other hand, would suggest like this. School districts are reimbursed for every pupil they bring in. So it's not that the state is punishing them by not giving them money. It's up to the school district to make their district enticing to bring those students in.
That's right.
So if your district is like Martin County, where we have a highly sought after school district, I mean, we have some pretty good population numbers. You know, there's other districts that are not as fortunate. So allowing parents the opportunity to send their kids to a more appealing school and having the funds to do so, I just think is a no-brainer. So
That's the theory of competition. You try and improve yourself to get that customer. So
exactly.
That's what competition's about. If you're just handed money and you don't have to do anything to improve yourself, there is no incentive to provide something better.
Exactly. I mean, why are you going to put forward the time and the effort to reinvest into your structure if you feel like you're already going to be stuck there?
Right.
You made what you're going to make, and that's it.
That's it.
You might as well just sit back and throw in the towel. So if you have students that are going into private schools in your community and you're running a local school district, then that's a great way to sit back and say, okay, why are they going to these schools?
Right.
Maybe it's something that the parents are just religious, for example, and they want to send their kids to a religious place. You're probably not going to capture them in your local school district, and that's perfectly acceptable. But maybe your school district's struggling and you have whatever your agenda might be. You can recapture those parents by looking at it. Is it something we can actually change and fix?
Right.
So.
Right. You never know. And speaking of education, Dr. Anzalon's going to be on the show on February 15th, and he's going to be talking about the IRSC Promise program.
Oh, what a beautiful program.
Oh, my gosh.
2 years free for students coming out of Martin County.
Yes.
I mean,
it's incredible.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's almost all private dollars, too. That's not public dollars
I do
at all.
believe it is. I'll ask him, but I believe it is. I think it was a grant that was given to the school. So it's absolutely incredible. But that's going to be exciting to hear how that's been rolling out. And it's expanding. That's the great part.
Yeah, really the only other one at the state level, well, there's a whole slew of them, but we always run out of time.
Of course, I know.
There's one
Evan's
right
telling
now.
us 4 minutes.
There's one right now that takes a look at how we address recalling constitutional officers and elected officials at the local level. And this is one that I would highly say people need to think about and reflect on before they go pushing into it. Because right now in the state, we have two different counties. We have chartered counties and non-chartered counties. With a chartered county, you get a lot more leeway to enact rules and regulations that are beyond that of the state. So you kind of get a stronger level of home rule. Having said that, the downside is that you can be recalled from office. So this gives the opportunity for the citizens to turn around and say, we don't like what we're doing, we're pulling you out. It cannot happen for non-chartered counties. So what makes that important is when you take away that threat of we're going to recall you, if we place that onto non-chartered counties and say, hey, we're going to recall you if we don't like what you're doing, well, now you've taken away any incentive to keep them in line. So if you can punish somebody, you're going to threaten to punish them with a recall, then what's to stop them from saying, okay, if I'm going to get punished, well, we're going to go that extra mile now. So you kind of lose that checks and balances system in there. Not to say that it's a bad thing to do, but that is going to require citizens to be significantly more involved preemptively. We cannot keep up this reactionary measure of, oh, this came to play, and now we're going to fight it after it's all said and done. Pet shop ban, for example, perfect example. You can't fight it retroactively. If you're going to take away the threat for your county officials or take away that protection and threaten them with recall for doing something wrong, you're giving them that extra authority. Okay, if I'm going to get punished, I'm going for it. So we as a citizen would be more required to go forward and make sure that we're not getting into that pickle to begin with.
Well, you're talking about unintended consequences. Okay, it sounds good. We can just recall them and that's it. But there's unintended consequences to that.
That's exactly it. So.
And so you don't know. So that's going to be an interesting bill to watch, honestly.
That'll be an interesting one to see to play out because you can't really quantify something like that. You know, unintended consequences are just that. You cannot predict them until they start to come to play.
Right.
So that's why you really got to think these ones through. Look at your wording and see how is this going to work out because there's going to be a curveball in there, guaranteed. So.
There will. There's always something.
And then I get really, real quick, I know we got 1 minute left. I want to touch on constitutional carry. Just popped yesterday.
Yes.
And this will be very interesting to see because the constitutional carry, I'm even remiss to call it constitutional carry because realistically, there's still a significant amount of regulation that sticks forward in this bill. Essentially, what we're doing is a permitless carry. You're not going to be required to have a permit to conceal carry in the state of Florida. It's still going to be illegal to open carry should you decide to go, or should this bill pass. So this is going to be an interesting one to see how it plays out because the open carry aspect is really one of the biggest problems with constitutional carry in the state. People that want to carry a firearm concealed, The people that are on the up and up and on the good side, they suck it up and they pay their $90 and they get their permission slip. So
yeah,
we'll see how this one actually transpires. But I got a feeling that one's going to go through a lot of revision in committee.
I bet it will. It's certainly going to get a lot of publicity as well. I mean,
Most definitely.
Just across the nation with all the gun laws and gun arguments and, controls that want to be put out there. And, of course, NRA will be, I'm sure, here. And it's we have just 30 seconds. Mike Circus, appreciate you coming into the studio today. Mike, you'll definitely be back and continue following up on these bills that you've talked about. It'd be very interesting to see what happens. Session starts March 1st.
I think it's, March 7th.
March 7th. Yep. So it's coming up. Next week, I'll see you back here, and we're going to have again Jimmy Smith and 4-H'ers with Dave Hafner.
4-H'ers with Dave.
Take care. We'll see you next Wednesday.